Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to create a landscape and make a palette. And before we get started, this is a miniature version of the painting that we're going to create. Your teacher may or may not have you do that part of the lesson, but you're definitely going to create a palette. And I wanted to talk to you really quickly about color bias. If you haven't already talked about it, there's always in every set of paint, there's going to be 2 blues, 2 yellows, 2 reds. And then I also have white over here. So all color bias is that one blue and yellow is going to make the most vibrant green. The other blue and yellow is going to make a less vibrant green, kind of like an avocado. And one yellow and red is going to make the most vibrant orange. The other yellow and red is going to make more of a pumpkin orange, and so on and so forth. So you get the idea. We're going to use, the colors we're going to use today are, we're actually going to use the, this blue, azul, which is like, on this one it's anthraquinone. I don't know if I'm saying that wrong. And then we're also going to use the medium yellow, which is going to have an orange bias. This is going to have a green bias. I'm going to put that to the side. Phthalo blue is going to have a green bias. And then actually I'm going to use the nap red, which has got an orange bias instead of the violet bias, just because that's the color of violet that I want for this painting. And let me just show you really quickly what bias looks like, okay? I think the easiest one to see the difference in is green. So I'm going to use phthalo blue. And the light yellow light, which is going to have green bias, okay? And then I'm going to use the other yellow on the other side, which has the orange bias. And I'll show you just the difference in the colors of green, okay? I'm not going to do all of them, you guys, because you can mess around and do a palette that shows all the different variations if you want. I just kind of want to give you an idea of what color bias is and how to use it. So I'm going to take my paintbrush and I'm just going to quickly mix. So I'm going to always start with your lightest color when you're mixing. So I'm going to take a little bit of the yellow, a little bit of the blue, and this has got the green bias. Okay, so this is going to make a really vibrant looking green. Okay, can you guys see that? Yeah. And then I'm going to use the opposite bias, and actually I'll use the opposite blue as well. So there's a big difference. So this has got the less intense version of green. Okay, so we're going to start with the lightest color again, start with yellow, and add a little bit of blue. Okay, so can you see the difference in those colors? Obviously. So this is more of a Kelly green, this is more of an avocado green. So that is basically simplified what color bias is. All right. So for this lesson, I'm going to use, I'm not going to use the correct bias for my violet. I'm going to use the nap red, which has got an orange bias. You guys might have different names of your paint, but you can tell the bias by just doing a quick test to see which one has green, which one has blue. And then I'm going to use my violet bias blue, and I'm going to use my orange bias yellow, which is the medium. Yours is probably like cad yellow medium, maybe. Add a little more yellow. And then white. And when you do acrylic paint, guys, just squirt out as much as you need. You can always add more, but once you squirt it out, you can't reuse it, okay? All right, so first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tape my paper down to my board, and I'm just going to use blue masking tape. And I do this with every acrylic painting that I do. And you can use any kind of tape that you want, but it just holds the canvas in place. And if you don't take it off the roll, just leave it on the roll, then you know you've got the right length tape. This is like one of my favorite parts. It's so weird, but I love taping down my canvas. Okay. Make sure you have a tight seal all the way around. Okay. So when you're doing acrylic painting, you always want to start with a base, right? You're just gonna you're doing layers, and you want to start with one color on the background. So what I'm gonna do is, you don't ever really, I mean, there's always exceptions, but generally you don't want to see the canvas in an acrylic painting. So I think what I'm going to start with is I'm going to add, I might just do like stripes. So with this one, I'm going to start with my sky, and then I'm going to come on down with the pink and the yellow, and I'm just going to let that kind of fade, and then I'll let that dry and come in and do the mountains. Okay. So our first color, you can mix a lot on your canvas, but I'm going to start by getting that light blue that we have to start. And again, you want to start with your lightest color. I need more than that because I'm doing the background right now. And start with just a little bit of blue. You don't need much blue to turn this light blue, okay? Again, you can always add more blue, but it's hard to add more white because it'll take forever to get that the right color if you do it that way. It's hard to go lighter. It's easier to go darker. Okay, that looks good. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and start. The cool thing about acrylic paint, you know, unlike watercolor, is if you mess up, you can just paint right over it. With watercolor, that's harder to do. Watercolor is all about transparency. So I'm gonna go right in with my blend here, you guys. So I'm getting some light blue at the top, and I might even take a little bit of my darker blue and go ahead and do a little mixing on the canvas, because I want it to be a little darker at the top. Remember where you have your tape as well, because the tape is going to come off, so you're not going to see the tape, okay? And then I'm going to come into the white. So orange and blue are complements, remember? So they're going to make a neutral, and you don't want it to have too much of a neutral. So what you're going to do is you're going to use kind of a white in between to kind of blend those two. And also controlling your water with acrylic paint is huge. All right, you don't want too much water on your brush. You also don't want too little. Okay, so yeah. I'm gonna go down a little further than you think you need to, okay? Like almost halfway down your canvas with the white. And you want to work fairly quickly because you want this to be wet. When you're doing the blending, you want it to be still wet. When you do the layering, you want it to be dry, right? Okay, and then I'm just gonna take, I want to mix a little bit of yellow and red. Because I want to get that nice light orange color. and I'm going to start on one side and come over towards the center. Go on the other side. And then I'm going to clean off my brush because I want to get a really beautiful, vibrant yellow. You want it to be a little bit to the right, but mostly centered for this painting. You'll end up doing your own landscape painting, but for right now we want to try to do this one first. I'm going to lay in my yellow. And then I'm going to add a little red to that. Control the pressure of your brush. And you guys, you can also you can let this dry and come back to it if you need to. That's not an easy blend to go yellow to pink, orange, but you can do it. I know you can. And like I said, if you're having trouble with it, you can always just come back after it's dry, and that'll enable you to do a little bit more to it, or you can also fix some stuff that you don't like if you don't like it. But I'm sure you guys are going to do great. So that's basically the background. Now I need to let that dry. Okay, so this is dry now. I'm going to take my blue and move it to a new plate, a new palette, I should say. You guys might actually have real palettes, which would be cool. I'm just gonna scoop up my white that I have left over. It's okay because I'm gonna end up blending blue with the white, so it should be okay. All right, and then there we go. All right, so the next part of our painting is gonna include violet and blue and white. So let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and mix the blue that I'm going to use for my mountain. And if you want, you can kind of take a pencil and kind of draw where you want your mountain to be. So remember rule of thirds. You don't want your mountain to be lower. You want it to be a little bit higher, like the top peak. So I kind of want my top of my mountain to go here. And I want it to kind of go flat there. Then come down. Draw very lightly, okay? Because first of all, not all acrylic paint is going to cover pencil. Depends on the brand that you use. So that's good enough for now. That's all I need. Okay, and if you can't see it, don't worry, because you'll be able to see it in a minute. And also, if it doesn't match completely, it doesn't matter at all. So don't worry about that. All right, so we're going to start with white. I'm going to add a little bit of blue. And get a nice light blue going. Medium blue, I should say. Okay, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna keep most of my brush with that medium blue, and then I'm gonna add some of the darker blue to the tip of my brush. This will kind of aid in the blending because I want the dark to be at the top of the mountain. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and go along the line that I drew. And what we're doing is we're going to paint the blue pretty much all the way down to the bottom at this point, okay? Okay, so that's our first mountain. And then our second mountain is going to come from here and come up. And you're going to end up putting a violet or light lavender almost like color here, which is going to differentiate these two mountains from each other. The one behind it is slightly lighter, but not too much, so you're not going to see that much of a difference. Okay, and then we're going to let that dry. Okay, so now we're going to do the violet, which is basically between these two. So I added more white, and I'm actually going to add the opposite bias red, and I'm going to add a little bit more of my blue, which has this one has the violet bias. Okay, and so what we're going to do right now is we're going to add, that might be a little wet, that's right. We're going to add this violet. Okay, oops. And then we're going to add the hills in front, and then we're going to add the snow at the foreground. Okay, so let's make our violet. I'm going to use a square brush or angled brush for this. And I'm going to start with making the violet. So I'm going to start with my red and then add some blue. I want it to be kind of a blue violet. And then I'm going to take some white. All right, so now I'm going to do this piece right here. So I'm going to start with like a little bit off the left and then just kind of come down. Okay, and then we're going to add our smaller hills in the foreground. So, and actually I'm going to do a little bit of a darker blue at the top of my mountain over here. That's okay, I'll come back and fix it. Cool thing about acrylic paint though, guys, is that you can come back and fix whatever you need to fix, which is awesome. Can kind of drive you crazy, but all right. I'm just gonna fix this really quick. All right. So then these other hills, if you see, they're like, they come right about here and they're just like kind of flat and then up and then out. So again, it's gonna be the darker blue. Make sure you're controlling your water. Talked about. I might actually add a tad bit of red. Get a little bit of a violet tone. Okay, it goes about here. Create some overlapping in the foreground, kind of creates some distance. Okay, so we've got it going on now. So what we're gonna do is let this dry. Okay, sorry guys, for some reason my video cut out at a very unfortunate time. So I have my hills that I laid in, and I put a highlight on this hill and a highlight on this hill. And then I added this white snowdrift in the foreground, and I did the trees. So you know what I'm gonna do, because I don't want to paint this whole thing again. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna paint over my trees so that you can see how I did the trees. So you're gonna paint the snowdrift at the bottom, pure white, and it's gonna be a little less than a third up the page on the left, and a little less than a third away from the far right corner. And you're just gonna go straight across and then slope down, okay? So you're gonna let that dry, and then you're going to put in your trees. And I wanna show you guys how to do trees, and that's why it was kind of important to come back and do this. So I'm gonna paint over what I have, okay? Because you're gonna put in, I have like a dark bluish purple, and you're gonna put that in first. So you're just gonna kind of go like back and forth. It's actually called something, and I can't remember what it's, scumbling. And you can come over your snowdrift a little bit because you're gonna have to come back and put that in again. So kind of just put in the dark first, okay? Just like I'm doing, and you kind of just move your brush like back and forth. Obviously it's a little bit thinner at the top. I'll actually add a new tree for you. Try not. And you don't want to worry, like if it doesn't look exactly like a tree, it's okay, because you're going to come back and it's like a painting of a tree. It's not obviously not a real tree, right? So now you have all of the dark trees in, okay? Then you're going to come back with that violet or the lavender highlight, and you're going to put that in, and it's going to make it look better. So we're going to let that dry. And so now that's dry, and so I'm going to come back over that with the lavender. So now I have the light violet on my brush, and so now you're just going to come in and you're going to do some highlights, right? Same kind of thing, is scumbling. Remember that probably the right hand side is going to have a little bit more highlight than the left. But there still will be some on the ends of the white, like depending on how far they're going to reach out past the actual tree. And the trick with nature is to try not to make it look like it's too planned, which is hard for us as humans because we like to try to keep things ordered in our minds. But what you try to do is just try to make it, break it up a little bit by changing the angle of your brush or using the tip of your brush sometimes. And you can add like more than just 2 colors into these trees if you want. You could add a third color, like a medium violet blue, if you wanted to make them look really good. Or it might make it too much, but you can experiment. Like I said, with acrylic paint, it's nice because if you change your mind, you don't like something, the way you did something, you can come back in and you can redo it. So, and you can add some more dark blue if you feel like you got too much white somewhere. Okay, it looks good. And so those are the trees, and I'll zoom in on that for you. And then I'm going to come back over this with white one more time because the white is in the foreground. Okay. And at the very end, if you look at this one, I took some blue and just kind of moved it through there. And that's what I'm going to do really quick right now. I'm just going to streak it with a little bit of blue, just so it's not so pure white. And now you're done. So that's the landscape painting. So I hope you guys have fun with this. This is Sabrina from A Space to Create Art.